This is Business Decoded podcast with Ronnie Spellman. An informal chats with top business moguls as they share their stories of failure and success in a fun and relaxed way. Get entertained, educated, and unlock the secrets to success.
Welcome to the Business Decoded podcast with Ronnie Spellman. We are back with a fantastic guest, Anisha Holla. Anisha, welcome back.
Thank you, Ronnie. Thanks for having me again.
The last time we spoke, so you're the founder and CEO of Foodify, which is an incredible organization that you built while you were still in college. And the idea of building a company in college while you're taking classes and doing homework is just complicated, right? But you did. But there was something that you mentioned in the last program. So I want to use this segment to really discuss and understand what it is that you've created from a business perspective. You were successful in your first year. You generated good revenue. But you mentioned that you were trying to figure out whether the pre-med route was where you wanted to go when you first started school. And then you decided to consider politics. You interned in the White House for the United States. And then you had someone say that you need to not focus on what you want to become, but who you want to become. And that night, when you were analyzing who you wanted to become, you created the foundation for what would become your company, Foodify. So you're the founder and CEO of Foodify. What is Foodify?
Yeah, so Foodify is the first of its kind matchmaking app between small restaurants and food influencers in their city. So, food influencers are these people that literally have hundreds of thousands of followers. They go around and take videos at local restaurants and show their local audience who these restaurants are, what they sell, what's special about them. And so, it's a way for small businesses to drive traffic to their businesses because each month they're matched with a local food influencer who essentially posts about them and makes them viral, gets them people coming through the door.
Anisha, I'm getting old, but how does Ronnie become a food influencer? Like, help me understand how that process works. How do I get that label?
I think anyone above 10K followers, I would say, can be considered a pretty, sizable influencer.
And I'm partly kidding, but it's such a unique place to build an expertise that you become a food influencer. So what is if someone's looking to become a food influencer, other than just the numbers, how do you become that person? Like what technique do you use or employ? I think you gave some ideas on how you create a positive online social media engagement. 3 seconds, I think you said, and you start with a question or a set of questions. Right? How do you reach that level of being a food influencer?
I think consistency is the biggest thing, honestly. Yeah. You starting out, it's discouraging when you're posting videos of restaurants and they're getting 200, 300 views. Right. You're like, is this helping anyone? But all it takes is one viral video for your page to literally change overnight. I remember it was a Middle Eastern place that I just posted a random video about, and I slept, and the next morning I woke up and it was at 80,000 views. Wow. And then the account just took off from there. So I think consistency is really key, because if one message doesn't resonate, another one will. And it's just a matter of keep trial and error until you find that message that really, just goes viral and brings people to your page.
And something I've often wondered, so when you're creating these videos, you're using TikTok and Instagram, how do you set up the background? Is there like an art to setting up the environment when you're creating this video content?
Yeah, that's a really funny question, because when I go out and eat with my friends, they always get mad at me because they're like, why are we spending 30 minutes just setting things up? Like, let's eat the food before it gets cold. But there's definitely an art to it. A lot of people don't realize what goes on behind the camera.
Okay.
There's certain things that look more colorful that you want to put at the front of the table. There's certain ways you can pick things up and lift things for the video to just make the food look very aesthetically pleasing.
Interesting.
And there's certain things you can say in the video. This is the biggest thing I've noticed, is that some certain things I say in the video is what makes it viral. Because if I, for example, say that the owner has been making his taco recipe for 40 years, that's something that people really like. Their ears perk up. They're like, oh, tacos that have 40 years of recipes behind them. Like, I need to try that,
Interesting. What's some other unique items like that you mentioned that can help a video catch attention? Because that's an interesting point.
Yeah, I think it's exactly that stuff that makes the audience of that video know that there's something different about it, something special about it. Yeah, If you go to a sandwich shop and say, these the sandwich shop has 5 different sandwiches. They have different types of bread and toppings. That's not really capturing anyone's attention. But if you say the owner moved here from Chicago and he's been making his sandwiches for 30 years, and he closed down his location in Chicago because there was just so much demand for it, and now he's in Dallas making the same sandwich that's been in his family for 30 years, like that's something that people are like, oh, I need to try that sandwich.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
There's a place that I went to a couple years ago. I'm told they have the best barbecue in Texas, and Texas barbecue especially. You came from Illinois, so I was new to Texas barbecue with the brisket. So we drove out, and I was told you need to get there early. They're only open on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and they sell out quick. I think they opened at 10, and we just happened to be going in that area, which is near Fort Worth. And I thought 8:30 is more than sufficient. I'm not going to get there any earlier if they open at 10. So I get there at 8:30. We had like a 2-hour wait once they opened just to get in to try the food. The line was outrageous. People were camped out in tents and chairs, and it was a hot day. But you're right. If there's something that captures your attention, then people will come from far. We met someone that came into the U.S. just to go to this place as the #1 barbecue place in the state of Texas. It's pretty wild how that works.
Wow, yeah. I wonder how they heard about it, because that's an interesting story.
Right, it was, and the food was good. So, what is mukbang? This is something that's kind of new to me. I hear it started overseas, and I think South Korea. What is that, and how does it relate to the food influencer segment?
I think a lot of times people are looking for things that look good to eat. I think as a society and as a social media centric world now, we've become so focused on what we're seeing visually. And that's the reason why a lot of this content goes viral, is because people see something that looks really good and they want to eat, and they will drive, like you said, sometimes across the countries, from other countries, to try it. And so mukbang is this concept of people just sitting in front of the camera and candidly eating. And I think part of the reason it works so well is because when you see someone else eating something and enjoying it and like stuffing it in their face because they love it so much, it just makes you want to try it too.
I think those Arby's commercial, it makes me think of the Arby's commercial where they're eating, they have the meats and they're eating this big sandwich and it's just dripping as they're eating it. And it is tempting, right? To want to have that experience of enjoying something that delicious, right?
Exactly. And that's the reason I think a lot of food influencers work too, is because you're literally seeing other people go to the place that you might be going to and having the experience from scratch. Right. So you almost know what you're going to experience before you even get to that restaurant. Right. And I think that's what a lot of people are looking for nowadays before they spend money on a place, is like, how is it going to look? What am I going to get there? What is the food going to look like? Right. What is it going to taste like? Those are all things that you can put in the video to make people, kind of understand what they're going to experience and have when they get there.
So let's walk through a little bit of the mechanics of your business, because I know other business leaders are looking. They don't understand the influencer world. They can't figure out how you do what you do, or even that you generate a profit. So certainly don't mention anything that would be proprietary, but how does it work? What happens with the restaurateur? How does it work with the influencer? How do you bring money into your business? Are you a marketing agency? Are you an influencer agency? Do you represent talent? Like, what are you and how are you generally structured?
So I would steer away actually from calling it either an agency for the influencer or for the restaurant, because in reality, I guess we're a very automated like matchmaking platform for the two. 80% of influencers in Dallas that I've spoken to are doing this full time. This is their full time thing. Wow. They're going to restaurants and they're making money off of it because they're driving so much traffic. And, obviously restaurant owners, 80% of them are doing that full time. They left their corporate jobs, they left their kids, they left their home country to come here and cook something or bake something they're passionate about. And so what we're doing is essentially just connecting these restaurants that need the traffic, that need people to come through their doors and know who they are, and their livelihood depends on it, to these influencers who also are depending on the income that they're making from these videos to sustain their livelihood and to keep doing what they're passionate about. So the restaurant is paying us and we're paying the influencers. So the restaurant's not only happy because they're paying for, 3-hour lines outside the door, but the influencers surprisingly have been so happy with Foodify, because there's not been a solution like this before for them of just a consistent source of paid opportunities for them to visit local restaurants they're passionate about and they love and sound good to them, and also get paid for that and be able to turn their passion, which is creating content, into a full-time a full-time job.
So if someone is creating a restaurant and they're looking to find a way to market differently, how do they find you? How do they reach out to you?
Yeah, we have a website. It's foodifyapp.com. That's a great place to look. And honestly, like part of what I love doing so much is just educating restaurant owners. Even if Foodify is not for them, like I love just showing them the impact of influencers.
Right.
So there's a bunch of case studies on there, how influencers work. Restaurant owners can definitely look it up there and kind of understand how the whole thing works.
Can you tell? So if a restaurant person is listening now, what does the case study help them figure out? Like what do you uncover in the case study that is appealing to this restaurateur?
I think just the power of social media. Like I said, a lot of restaurant owners, they don't know what social media can do for them until they experience it themselves. And so one of my favorite case studies is one of our first customers, actually, it's a Brazilian restaurant. And the owner, he was seating 25 tables a night. He was scared. He was like, I used my dad's money. I borrowed my dad's money to open this restaurant, and now I'm going to have to shut down. I'm paying so much in rent. I'm paying my employees, and I don't know what to do. And he was just really scared. And I remember like telling him, hey, don't worry, it's going to be okay. Let's just get a couple influencers in here. And so we did. We called like a couple influencers through Foodify. Each month, a different influencer was posting about him.
Nice.
He went from seating 25 tables to 230 tables a night in the span of a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
and
huge.
I remember he was just overjoyed. He was like, oh my God, like I'm getting so many customers from social media, which is something I thought was just used for entertainment. I thought it was pointless. I didn't even have a presence on here before. But once you hear case studies like that and you see the impact yourself, I think that's what turns on the light in a lot of restaurant owners' minds is like, this is how I reach Gen Z nowadays. They're just scrolling endlessly on Instagram and TikTok. And if they find my restaurant on there, they want to try me out, then I'm going to have a wait outside the door the next day.
So how much does an influencer cost then on average? I know it vary a lot, but what does that process look like? Just out of curiosity. I've not spent any time in that space.
It depends on the size of the influencer, obviously. Okay. But what I will say is that what was really cool we're able to do through Foodify is actually get like discounted rates from these influencers.
That makes sense.
Because normally an influencer that would charge like, let's say $2,000 for a video, they're willing to do it for $500 through Foodify because we're giving them so many opportunities and they're getting, 10 $500 opportunities versus one $2,000 opportunity.
Now, that's cool that you figured that out because I spent a lot of time leading a supply chain management company, and part of my deal in creating these large national contracts, a deal would have been $160 million annually. Other deals would have been 80, 70 million. But what I was banking on was my volume. And so that's not anything unique, but you've done the same thing on the influencer side. Let me bring you more volume, give me a better price, and it benefits everyone. The influencers are getting that continuous stream of people. They don't have to go out and market necessarily to find the customers that you're bringing to them. And the same thing with the restaurants. They're benefiting from the influence of those influencers, but you've negotiated a good rate.
Exactly,
so that everyone wins. That's really cool.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, all the influencers we work with are also passionate about helping small businesses. So it's really powerful for the business owner to have access to all these influencers that really care about their business and are willing to do it at such a lower rate than what they would charge normally.
Now, how do you vet your influencers? I think you mentioned that they're selected by 3 criteria. What do you look for in finding the right influencer to join your team as a part of your program, but also the right influencer for the restaurant?
So there's 3 main categories that we look at. One is obviously how many followers that they have.
Yes.
But the second thing is actually influencer fit, because if someone has 1 million followers, but all of them live in, or like let's say 99% of them live in New York and 1% live in Dallas, like that's not going to impact that small local mom and pop restaurant in Dallas that just wants people, within a 10-mile radius to come to their business. And so the second thing we look at is how many of their followers actually live in Dallas, how many of their followers are actually interested in the type of food that this restaurant is selling. For example, if it's a steakhouse, we wouldn't want to match them with an influencer who posts about, hole-in-the-wall fried chicken places, because that's a completely different audience that they're targeting. So influencer fit is the other thing we look at, and then engagement rate. So how many of those followers that the influencer has are actually engaged with their content, are actually liking, commenting, sharing, and actually going to the restaurant once they see it online. That's a big thing I think a lot of restaurant owners fail to notice, is that they see an influencer with 500,000 followers and think this person's definitely going to bring impact to my business. But the reality is where do those followers live? What are they actually interested in? Are they real followers? Are they bots? There's a lot of vetting that goes on behind the scenes that restaurant owners just don't know how to do themselves. So that's another thing we kind of take care of for them.
So how do you get the analytics on those influencers? Is there a special way, or is that something that you ask them to submit to you? The engagement rate, because that's pretty detailed, understanding that information.
Yeah, they're submitting that to us at the beginning. So when we bring influencers on board, that's something that we have them kind of, fill out and tell us so that we can properly make sure we're building only like a very highly credible database of influencers.
So how many influencers do you have now as a part of the platform?
Podcasts are so popular, even monkeys are doing it.
75% of Americans listen to podcasts monthly. That's 210 million people in the United States alone. And yes, podcasts are profitable. Joe Rogan is making $30 million per year. Your content, your knowledge is worth sharing. Don't just dream it, do it. Visit andycostafilms.com/podcast and turn your content into leaks.
Oh, we have over 1,200 actually across the U.S.
Okay, that is incredible.
Yeah.
And how are you finding them across the U.S. Do you find that they're now looking for you?
Yes, sometimes I will say like 20% of the time they're reaching out to us now that we've grown a name brand. Yeah. But I think 80% of the time I have a team of interns and a team of operations that's been helping me kind of literally just sit down and look through Instagram for who are these food influencers that are getting good engagement, that have real followers and are making great content that's going to, like we discussed before, show this business off as something unique that their followers will want to visit.
And you're continuing to expand. I know that you're looking at New York City and you're looking at San Francisco and Atlanta. Talk us through some of that expansion. You have how many? 1,200 influencers?
Yeah. So
walk us through that expansion.
Yeah, of course. We have influencers all across the U.S. and all of those target cities we're looking at. And now it's just a matter of getting it to restaurant owners. It's kind of a two-sided marketplace. So one of the tricky things is you have to build one side of the marketplace first before you can start recruiting the other side. And so we've already built out our database of influencers. We have all of them are super excited about it. We get emails every day from influencers saying like, oh, how do I become a part of this? This is so cool. This is exactly something I was looking for. And now it's just a matter of letting businesses in those cities know that we're there and that we exist. And it's a way for them to get influencers at a discounted rate who are highly credible and can bring traffic to their businesses.
Now, are you thinking about looking at other brands or industries outside of food? Because it sounds like you built an incredible platform that's serving a great need.
Yeah, I think our niche is really local businesses, whether that's food, whether that's entertainment. Our whole business model is that we connect local businesses with local influencers, which is something that hasn't been done before. All these big companies, big influencer companies are focused on national influencers, right? Like who has the most followers. We're really focused on these local influencers that are going to drive local traffic. So whether that's a head spa, we have a couple of those. A nail salon, we have a couple of those. A golfing simulator, we have a lot of partners that are just local businesses that are still looking to get their names out, but not necessarily related to food, but can still benefit from the local attention.
Yeah, I happen to be introduced to an organization that is a pure marketing agency, but they only focus on that influencer. And what's fascinating is that a lot of influencers now have representation, like talent agents, and they're out there pushing them across the spectrum to different companies to try to generate business for them. There's a whole ecosystem out there that I don't think a lot of people know exist surrounding influencers. It's just an amazing place, and it's continuing to grow. And so much of the marketing dollars, I think, are moving to that segment versus traditional television and the like. So it's really neat to see what's happening.
Yeah, definitely. There's a huge shift. And I think, like you said, a lot of big companies are starting to realize that too, and directing more marketing money towards there, because you realize it's a very profitable segment for both the influencer and the business who's spending a certain amount of money and making so much back in the sales that they see.
Right. And it's a legitimate business. It's a legitimate title, right? It's a legitimate industry to have these influencers. And they're not just athletes, right? In the old day, you see an athlete on a commercial, for instance, or maybe a movie star, but regular people are becoming influencers. They've just built a large following.
Exactly.
So there's an opportunity for young people and anyone to get into that influencer space.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's how I started too, is just posting content on my platform and just hoping that something would resonate and kind of being consistent about it. I think that's all it takes to build a successful platform. You just have to find that niche audience that really is invested in your content and loves the recommendations and the things that you show on there.
And there was something that you mentioned earlier that I'd love to come back to, because I like to spend the last few minutes talking about how you would inspire other people to start a business of all ages. Now, you're Gen Z, but you have so much wealth and knowledge. What you've built, you've generated so much experience as well that I think would be beneficial to other people. So we're Business Decoded. So I want to take a few minutes and kind of decode your ideas for how you can inspire other people to begin businesses. But one of the items that you mentioned, without mentioning the specific concept, is in Good to Great, Jim Collins speaks about the three circles of the hedgehog concept. It's what are you deeply passionate about? What can you be the best in the world at? And what drives your economic engine? So passion, income, and skill. And you've outlined those three areas that have worked for you. What Business Decoded tips, kind of in that vein, that you would give young people trying to figure out where they want to be? They don't, they may be like you, started out in pre-med or at one point considered politics, and then you found what you're good at, what you're passionate about, and what you can generate an income at. What Business Decoded tips would you give people to help launch their careers and discover who they are and not what they want to become?
Yeah, I think it's exactly that. You said it perfectly yourself. It's finding the intersection between something that's able to generate income, something that's somehow benefiting a population of people while also returning money, and finding the intersection between that and then something you're really passionate about, because entrepreneurship is not easy. Yeah. I worked so much less when I was working a 9-to-5 than I do now, honestly. But the difference is that this is something I'm passionate about. This is something that I wake up knowing that I'm going to have a good day today, because no matter how much I work, 14, 15, 16 hours, those are going to be good hours where I'm making a difference in something that I really believe in, that I'm passionate about. Yeah. And I think that's the key to any success in any field, honestly, is just finding what you're passionate about and aligning that with something that can make you money, because then it doesn't feel like you're doing it just for the money. It feels like you're doing it because you want to solve a problem or help a population of people, and the money just follows. So I think that's something that is a really good Business Decoded tip too, is just, chasing your passion, and then the money follows. It's not the other way around where you're chasing the money.
Now, you reminded me of a question that I've struggled with probably for the last 20 plus years whenever I go to high schools and I speak to high school students and I go to colleges, and they'll ask me this question. So I'll ask you, and what does your typical day look like? You just described, the 9-to-5, 8-to-5 job and the 15 hours. And that's hard for me because I don't want to scare them. But at the same time, helping them understand when you find that passion for something, it doesn't feel like work. You can take a vacation and you might still be working partly on the vacation, but it still doesn't feel like you're working, right? But so the question for you, if you're on a high school stage or a college stage, and someone asks you, what does your typical day look like? How would you answer the question?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think one beautiful thing about being an entrepreneur is that every day looks different, It
does.
Every day brings a new challenge. Every day brings a new opportunity. And that's just something that's so unique about entrepreneurship that you won't find in a standard, corporate job or any other job that you maybe seek out where you're kind of, working in an organization that already has roles largely set. But I will say, I think I usually wake up around like 8 a.m. and I'll just feel so excited to wake up. That feeling of being excited for the day to start is something that I've never felt before I started Foodify. So I'm just so grateful for that. But, wake up, take meetings, generate leads. A lot of times I'll visit actual restaurants because they'll call me to scope out their place, see if it's influencer worthy. So a lot of times, as a pro bono thing, I'll just go and kind of look around the restaurant and tell them, oh, I think that has viral potential. I think this has viral potential. I think you could possibly tweak the menu in this way to make, it more camera worthy. And then we'll bring them on Foodify, and they're just amazed at the results. I don't know if you've heard of Dubai chocolate by any chance. Okay, it's this hugely viral chocolate bar that's stuffed with pistachio, and everybody's going crazy over it. And that's all it is the chocolate stuffed with pistachio. But a lot of restaurant owners, I'll tell them, you should add that to your menu because Gen Z loves it. And as soon as they add it, they just see a
You
line
know what?
outside the door.
I did. I walked by a chocolate place and a donut place. They were right next door to one another. And you're right. They had that on the menu. So I had to ask them what that was about. And they said the same thing now that you remind me.
Yeah, it's just a viral phenomenon. And it's helped so many restaurant owners. Just adding something as simple as like a viral chocolate bar to their menu will bring people through the door, especially if influencers are out there posting about it. It's just crazy, honestly, the kind of stuff that can be driven by virality. But yeah, that's what my day looks like, honestly. It's just lead gen, speaking to restaurant owners, figuring out challenges, having team member meetings with like my team members and my interns and stuff like that. I think that's the beautiful thing about being an entrepreneur is there's just so much that happens in one day.
Right. That's pretty amazing. So you mentioned the concept of viralizing your business. And how do you make a restaurant influencer ready? That's kind of, or influencer worthy, I think is the term that you use. That's kind of fascinating. What does that look like? Is it changing what in a restaurant to make it influencer worthy? That's kind of a cool concept.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is branding. A lot of these restaurant owners, they come into the space because they're really passionate about cooking something or baking something, but they themselves don't know what their brand is. Like the pie shop, for example, she had 50 different pies on her shelf, but she was branding herself as a pie shop, which inherently doesn't sound too interesting. You know, you can get 500 different pie shops next to each other. But we kind of went in and I told her, why don't we brand you as a rotating specialty pie shop with over 50 different flavors at once? And we started doing these pie flights where you could have like samplers of all of their different pies on one flight.
Pie flights?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so she started doing those, and those just took off with influencers because you realize, like, if I want pie, I can go to 50 different places in Dallas. But if I want to try 50 different flavors of pie under one roof in one plate where I can sample all these different flavors of pie, that's the only place I can go to do that. So it's just a matter of figuring out your brand and really what makes you unique, I would say.
Cool. That's really cool. So as you continue building your expertise, you're a year out of college, a year and a few months out of college. How do you continue to find your skills? How do you continue to learn the different business decoded kind of concepts to keep you innovating and fresh and growing your business and expanding your business across the country you're doing? How do you stay current and grow as a leader?
I think what you guys are doing here is part of the strategy, honestly, is listening to podcasts, reading books, watching entrepreneurs in real life that you look up to and seeing what they do that makes them successful. I think that's part of the game, is figuring out how other people are working and what tips that they can give you that they've experienced themselves already. And then I think just being in the thick of your business just teaches you so much,
It does.
Things that I never even thought that I would be learning on the job, like how to build a pitch deck, for example. That's not something you think about on the daily, but when you're forced to, scramble for funding and see where you can get money for your company, that's something you kind of just have to like look up and figure out how to do. So I think a lot of it is just being in those practical scenarios that really helps you get the skills and just, like I said, looking online, watching podcasts, YouTube videos. I think those are a great place to start.
Yeah, I had a chance to meet the founder of a company that grew into $1 billion publicly traded business. She was one of the youngest female billionaires ever in the country. And to hear her talk about the things that she learned, how to deal with attorneys, constantly how to deal with stockholders in a publicly traded company. It was a lot of learning as she grew the business. So it sounds like you're on that journey.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. It's just speaking to customers, speaking to people that are using your product and just learning from them. And there's a quote by Bill Gates that I think is so beautiful. It's like your most dissatisfied customers are your biggest source of learning. I think that's so true. Like there's complaints every day about different things, but I think the difference between a successful entrepreneur and someone who gives up is that you listen to those complaints and you think, how can I make sure this never happens again? Right.
That is so cool. So you have to promise me one thing, that when you reach $1 billion, you'll come back to this program and share more about what you've learned between now and then.
Will do, definitely.
Anisha Holla, the founder and CEO of Foodify, I am honored to have you on the program. I am elated just to see your evolution as a business owner and entrepreneur and someone who's kind of leading the next phase of businesses here in the United States. You're doing something really amazing.
Thank you, Ronnie.
I appreciate you sharing what you've built so far with our listening audience.
Thank you so much, and appreciate you guys having me. This was a really cool experience.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us on Business Decoded with Ronnie Spellman and having an opportunity to share our guest, Anisha Holla, and learn from her journey. But thanks for joining us again on Business Decoded with Ronnie Spellman.
Thank you for listening to Business Decoded podcast with Ronnie Spellman. Please be sure to subscribe and share and stay tuned for more incredible Business Decoded episodes.